welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by two creators of very interesting film projects and of a book now. I am so excited to talk about this really exciting novella, as well as a really interesting model for IP and for making films. So let's get into it. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves and your book, please?
Hey, we're the Baker Brothers. I'm Josh Baker.
I'm Jonathan, and we just wrote a book called The BLACKBIRD.
Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get to the book, could you tell us a little bit about your careers and your journey to this book?
Yeah, well, we're Aussies living in LA, which feels like a bit of a cliche at times. We've been here for 20 years. We were directing advertising back in Sydney in the early 2000s. And then we decided we're twins, let's just hook up and do this together. And so
we came up with a very original name, Twin.
Called Twin.
And we moved to the States in 2007 to New York. We did 10 years there. We've kind of stayed in the advertising game as a really great way to be creative, make money, stay on set, work with great creatives and crew members.
Yeah. And so we do that still quite often. But then the other side of our career is film and TV. And we made a movie called Kin in 2018 that was based off a short film that we made called Bagman, which got a lot of love, went to South by Southwest. People really liked it. And quite quickly, everyone wanted to know, what's the movie version? And so we had one up our sleeve and turned it into Kin.
And we're very blessed to have a great cast with Michael B. Jordan and Zoe Kravitz and Dennis Quaid, James Franco. Carrie Coon is now huge. So it was a big blessing of a project that sort of brought us into the Hollywood game.
Nice. Yeah, that movie is so fascinating. And the cast really is like absolutely stunning. Like people who were already established and people who were just like about to, blow up, like really, really fascinating point in their careers. So what was the inception point for this book? Was it a particular character or a setting or a mood that you wanted to explore? What was the origin of it?
Yeah, we found ourselves asking for a first book because it's something we've wanted to do for a while. We used to write books together when we were like before 10. We'd be on our dad's first home computer and like writing a chapter each, making detective stories and, print them out on dad's printer. And so it's something that we've kind of had in us. We were book nerds coming up. And so I don't know, we were like, what do we want to tell? And we've always been fascinated by assassin stories. I think there is something really fascinating about the role of a professional killer and just how they kind of glide through life in their own bubble. Rules don't apply. It's just fascinating that that's a thing that actually does exist out there. And so, classic assassin movies, Leon the Professional, La Femme Nikita, Collateral, movies like this we've been attracted to forever.
And so this is our little version of it. I think we always wanted to bring a sense of humanity to it. And that's where the young character, Joseph, who's hearing impaired and sees the world in a very different way, we clash that with a aging American assassin.
I'd love if you could talk about developing those two perspectives because, as you say, they are so different, but they bring out such fascinating traits in each other as well. So what came first for you? Was it like, I hope this makes sense. Was it like the specificity of the characters or was it like the connection between them that kind of inspired it?
I think it's a couple things. I mean, we did want to tell a bit of a road trip story and have two very opposing characters on the journey. It's kind of what we did with Kin, and it's something that we are attracted to.
Yeah, that kind of coming of age story in a very unique setting with unique odds. And for this one, I think we approached it from a very audio-visual perspective, a very cinematic perspective, because we wanted Joseph to be a very sensory character that sort of observes things intently. He can read lips, but he doesn't always know whether to trust the words that he's seeing. He cannot hear a gunshot fire.
But he'll feel the clap in the room.
So it becomes a very, in an odd way, a very sort of sensory, very cinematic read. And I think Josh and I have always approached our stories, the stories we develop for film and TV, and in this case for novel form, uh, in a very cinematic way. We see it in scenes, we see it in visuals, and we talk about how that could ultimately end up on the screen.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do is development. It's taking napkin ideas and turning them into full-fledged TV shows,
If you ask
features.
a filmmaker, pretty much all they do is development. To be honest,
Yeah, it's the majority of what you're doing. It's taking something simple and fleshing it out until it's something big and has depth. And there's no difference really doing that for on the page for a novella or doing that for a screenplay. And so we are quite used to brainstorming together and getting an idea that one of us, this would be a good idea for a story, and then cracking that out into something that's fully fledged.
You did mention that it was written cinematically, which is sort of a very nice segue into my next question. Your press release talks about how this is also a sort of a book to screen model that you are proposing. I'd love to ask, what, in your opinion, does this have to do with quote unquote sequel fatigue, which I know I am quite fatigued of sequels.
You have a bit of sequel fatigue.
I do. Yeah, I self-diagnosed through your press release.
Okay.
So.
I think we all do, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not against sequels if they're good. Look, I love Spider-Man. I'm down for Spider-Man 4. I want to revisit that character, but I think in general, we all know this. I think it's a casual conversation that people in society are having right now, that way too many sequels, way too many things reboots. And Hollywood really is built around the things that they know. And so IP has become well-known intellectual property, becomes kind of the only way. And I was really happy to see Project Hail Mary, an original thing based off a book, go to the cinema and completely crush a few weekends ago, because it was a great book and they made a great movie.
And then it's funny to see big franchises like A Quiet Place or John Wick, and they all come from original storytelling, and then suddenly Hollywood latches onto it and goes, well, we need more of those.
We need 5 of those.
So it is a very risk-adverse industry, and I think Josh and I have always been drawn to original stories and very personal stories to us. And so I think this just became a way, when you talk about book to screen, this is a way of creating our own IP and being sort of in charge of the material that we write, and then being able to capitalize on it having an audience and then developing it further into something else.
There's something really neat about that too. I think part of the sort of like supremacy of IP is that like stories never really are allowed to end anymore. Like there's just forever sequels where you have to sort of just like create a plot stasis, right, in order to like keep the franchise alive. And so when you lose standalones, you sort of like lose stories that kind of mean something in and of themselves. Does that make sense? Or
it makes perfect sense.
It does, and it clashes into the world we live in a way with film and TV. I mean, you're pitching ideas, and often they ask like, what is this? And they don't want to hear that it's a mini series. They don't want to hear that it's like a one-off. Everybody really wants that. Well, it needs to live forever. It needs to keep going and going and going. And I'm actually glad sometimes when I see TV shows that are like final season. I'm like, good for you guys. You hit an ending.
Or I reach out and find a self-contained comic book or something that was always just written as one piece, and it has a beginning, middle, and end. I'm really refreshed by that sometimes. There's a real poetry to it that just, it's about the moment, and I read it and I loved it, and I can move on to something else.
Absolutely.
In terms of your book to screen model or novel here, do you find that like writing a novel help you do any of the sort of like pre-work that you do when writing for the screen? Like, because I imagine there's a lot of like character work and things like that that
Yeah.
don't always make it onto the screen, but that are like essential pre-writing, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think for us at least, it is a very similar process, but it does take a lot of the pressure off because I feel like writing for a literary format like a novella or a novel, it's a little bit less of a screenplay structure. Yes, there is still midpoints and big endings and all of that kind of thing, character development. But I think we didn't consider it as, okay, we're now at page 15, so we need
We have to do this.
our inciting incident and all of these sort of typical screenplay structures. And so it's been a really interesting process to write very freely, to write in as much detail and as much emotion as possible. And then we've had conversations recently about now converting that into more of a movie format. And when people have read The Blackbird, they already say it feels like a movie to
Yeah,
me.
8 out of 10 people are like, feels like a movie. And I wouldn't say that's for every book. I think, movies are movies, books are books. But I enjoy when I read a book and I'm like, damn, feels
It's
like a great movie.
so cinematic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what they're touching on is that cinematic quality that it's easily painting pictures for them and feels like something that could go on the screen quite easily.
Mm.
And that was definitely the intent. And so we had a lot of conversations early on. Do we go straight to movie for this? Is this? Felt like a feature. And then like John said, when we were putting the book together, it just could become what it was, what it wanted to be.
That's so interesting. It sounds like it's sort of like writing like free verse versus a sonnet, like you have
Yeah.
more freedom while writing the novel. You're not constrained. So yeah, that's really a really fascinating glimpse into that process. What was the collaboration with Thomas Ray like, and how did that come about?
Well, I mean, Thomas Ray is very experienced in this space, and I think the way we work, we love to collaborate with on a film set. It's production designers and cinematographers and editors, and so we're very used to. We call it the sort of twin three-way dynamic
The triplet.
where we bring in a triplet for a moment, and they experience what we sort of have daily.
Everyone thinks they're the triplet. There's a lot of people out there who I'm the triplet. You're like, yeah, dude, you're the triplet.
But when we find that this sort of ego gets a little bit taken out of it, and ideas are less trapped in your own head in a very lonely place, and they become a conversation. And so everything gets put out there on the table. And when you're working with someone like Thomas Ray, he knows the format. He can give us little hints and tricks, but he also loves our passion for storytelling. And
He's also a great brainstormer. I mean, that's our strength is that I know who John is. We have the similar experiences, and I feel like if he's going to come up with an idea, I'm going to go, yeah, that fits pretty much of what I was thinking. And so there's a lot of finishing each other's sentences over here. When you can find a collaborator, and we found Thomas to be like this, that you can sit down and easily brainstorm. We'll go to a house with a lot of windows and start writing on those windows all the notes, and they just free flow out. I think that's a really enjoyable process. It's exactly what we love about development. It's just the idea is king. Whoever comes up with the best idea wins, and everyone's trying to one up it until it's perfect. And he's good at that.
That I guess the collaborative nature of that sort of creative partnership is a lot more like filmmaking than I guess traditional novel writing, where you're, in a room alone until you are, being
yeah,
interviewed by
it's
me.
so true. And I think that's all we know. So we sort of bring it to that process and honestly quite enjoy that process. I think voices that conflict the idea and start to take it in different ways, if that doesn't make sense, then we're happy to sort of throw that away. But I think when the chemistry is right on a
Mm,
film set or in a brainstorming room, a writer's room, it's unstoppable.
yeah.
So what is next for both for this novel and for your collaboration? I wonder, like, are you currently working on a screenplay for The Blackbird? I know that, you can't always talk about those things at liberty, but what is on your horizons?
We're loose-lipped.
Yeah, we're very loose-lipped. Yes, look, we have already started the process of taking what is on the page for this novella and turning it into a 2-hour movie, and what needs to stay and what needs to be taken to another place, and what does a movie deserve that maybe a book is a little different, and trying to work out that formula right now is definitely something we're in.
And so, yeah, directing The Blackbird as a film has always been a priority, and I don't think we're ashamed to say that. The process was just about how can we set it up to have the best life in 2026 Hollywood as we can, and with a, like we mentioned before, with a risk adverse industry, and with budgets dropping, and with AI coming in, and with hunger of audiences evolving. There's always those things you have to consider as you're sort of building a project up, and you want it to have the best life and as many eyes as possible on it.
Yeah.
And Josh and I find it really hard to sell out. So we really want to bring our own personal sort of energy to these projects, make sure it's honest to the kind of filmmakers and storytellers we are.
Yeah.
And so The Blackbird has a lot of like really quiet, beautiful character-driven moments, but it also has some great action and some thrilling moments too. And it needs to be the combination of those two things.
And I think the idea of writing the novel first and getting that experience, and then making a movie and getting that experience, would be really satisfying, that you kind of get two bites at the apple. They're very different, but they both kind of have legs, and they're both incredibly exciting.
And let's be honest, when you write a character like an aging assassin, like Tom in the book, you're always thinking of an actor in your mind anyway. So we may as well just send it to them.
That's so cool. Well, I hope, this is where I'm going to bring the audience in. Please buy The Blackbird to help the bakers sell out so that we can see this movie as well.
Help us sell out.
That'd be great.
Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your work with me and our listeners. It's been really great. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate you.
No problem. All right. And listeners, I've already told you, but again, just please check out The Blackbird. By the time it's out now. It'll be out when you hear this as well. So please check it out at your favorite bookstore or library or website, wherever you like to go for books. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.